Welcome to part 2 of Women in Ministry. In part 1, I made one major point, and that is the reason why women have not been fully active in the work of God in Christianity for practically 20 centuries. And I also pointed out that it was not really until the 1990s that a flood of women started to enter into the work, going to seminaries and becoming ordained. And so it's a very recent phenomenon. So not that I'm saying that I believe that God has called all of these women, but let's face it, he hasn't called a whole bunch of men that have been working in ministry either. And so my feeling about that, I'm just going to cut to the chase on that argument. I don't believe any human being, male or female, in this hour is called to the institutional church. And if you received a call to the institutional church, then I believe that that call came from the enemy. My point of view is that it's a moot argument whether a woman can preach, whether a woman can pastor, and all of that kind of thing. Whether she wear a doily on her head, you know, walking around looking homely. All of that is moot because ain't nobody supposed to be there. What I'm talking about now is women in ministry that God is going to use as a part of the remnant church, which shall not be connected at all to the institutional church. So I believe that our time has come to be in ministry outside of what has existed for the last 17 centuries or so. You know, I'm not called to that. I'm going to tell you straight up, I received all kinds of signs. I would say at least 10 of them. And it was while I was in the institutional church. And I responded to those signs, dreams, visions, prophecies, all pointing to that I was called to preach. Well, 25 years later, the Lord spoke to me and basically told me all of those signs that I had received about the call, he didn't send them. So I know I didn't send them. I didn't know anything at all about church, ministry. I didn't know what a sermon was back then. I had to preach a trial sermon. I didn't even know what a trial sermon was. So, the enemy does and is coming forth with these visions and dreams, directing people to go into ministry in the institutional church. And I'm here to tell you, the day of the institutional church is over. It has been judged, and I have no more to say about her. I'm speaking to a grassroots, unorganized body of believers that are somehow going to work together without having to be covered by each other. I don't believe in the doctrine of spiritual covering. It's a man-made thing. I shared with you in part 1 what the covering was all about. The covering was mentioned because of the angels. And now that's where I'm going to go. I'm going to go back to the angels. And I'm going to go back to my point, which is we have not been in ministry because it would have been dangerous for us because of the angels. But once we get our act together, get our emotions in control and our priorities set, get all of the garbage and junk from the institutional church out of us, we will be ready, sisters. Now, one of the first things that's going to happen to you if you are called for this end time season is the enemy will have put into your mind and worked on your conditioning about what I call Adam's rib. That you can't work for God until you have a husband, preferably a minister as a husband. That is your first false doctrine. And what will happen is that the enemy will use that to set you up. He will set you up by, knowing that you got this supernatural quality to you. He will give you a dream, a vision, or a prophecy about your future husband. And he'll add on that y'all supposed to work in ministry together and all of that. And there'll be so many confirming signs. And then you marry that joker, and practically the first day of the wedding, you will know that you made a mistake. And that the enemy set this up, put you in a relationship with a man for the purpose of destroying you. That's the bottom line. To destroy you. I've had this happen umpteen times. And the last two husbands that I married, the Lord ultimately told me, right after I divorced the second one, that both of them were sent into my life to destroy me, and they were sent by the enemy. So that's going to happen to you, if it hasn't happened already. You will be caught up in supernatural gifts, prophecy, healing, casting out devils, and the enemy will draw you away into these things, imitate God, and have you believing that you're working for God, but who you're really working for is the enemy. I'm sorry to say that, sisters, but that's the way it is. I've been there and I've done that. So I'm not just laying it out there to you. We are all vulnerable. We live in the church age of Laodicea, and the church age of Laodicea is characterized by deception. And so none of us are free from the wiles and the tricks of the devil. My task is to teach folk what I know about his wiles and his tricks. So don't fall for the Prince Charming soulmate minister thing. I'm thinking of the first time it happened to me. I was not in ministry, didn't know I was called to ministry, but the enemy knew I was called to ministry. And so I have this dream that I see this man standing in front of my church that I was attending, holding a robe and wearing a Sears Roebuck suit, navy blue, with navy blue suede shoes. And he said to me in the dream, "Girl, I'm going to marry you 2 weeks later, the Lord actually tried to stop me from going to church. But I had gotten a little religious by then. And even though I got to run in the stocking and the water overflowing in the house and all kinds of problems going on, what did I do? I went to church. And who did I meet? Mr. Sears Roebuck with his robe and his navy blue shoes. I would never have paid any attention to him because he was not my style of brother. But when he opened up his mouth at the close of the service, because he was the visiting preacher, he opened up his mouth and he said exactly what he said in the dream. Girl, you so pretty. I'm gonna marry you. In 3 days, that man had me in the bed. Why? Well, a lot of us think that if we sleep with a minister, somehow that's gonna make us holy. Well, let me tell you something, honey. This man was so hooked to reefer that he had me at 1 o'clock in the morning out on the street, going from door to door, trying to find somebody to sell me some for him. The cops rolled up on me. Ooh-wee. I stuffed it. Now, I don't have to tell you ladies where I stuffed it, but I stuffed it. Now, the cops roll up. I look out the window and they say, your coat's hanging out the door. I said, oh, thank you, policeman, thank you. But my point is this. He went in my pocketbook and he stole my money. And he Google-eyed my daughter, who was about 13, 14 years old at the time. He was sent from hell. And even after he did all of these things, I still wanted him like I was crazy. And then one night, I was laying in my bed. And the Holy Ghost, I call it the Holy Ghost vacuum cleaner. The Holy Ghost came and sat down on my chest and sucked out every bit of feeling and emotion that I had for that man. And when I came to, I was angry. I was like, he stole my money. And I never had another thing to do with him. But the devil was not finished with me. Not finished at all. Because when he finds something that works, he works it. You hear me? He works it. Till next time.